Welcome to a journey where history meets mythology, where existence soars through boundless imagination, and words sweep you away into slumber inside an ancient Greek temple. Let your mind settle, let your breath slow, and your thoughts soften tonight. We journey back to a land of warm sun, olive groves, marble temples, and whispered prayers to gods that felt close, tangible, present. This is ancient Greece, a place where daily life moved with the rhythm of nature and the will of divine forces, where myths weren't stories from books, but lived realities woven into work, into weather, into every stone beneath one's feet. You may smell the smoke of olive oil lamps. You may hear a lyre playing in the distance. So, close your eyes if you wish, and let us begin. Let your breath slow, and now, gently, imagine yourself waking, not in the world you know, but in another world, a world without electricity or engines, without alarms or urgency. Time flows not in numbers or deadlines, but in shadows stretching across whitewashed walls, in birdsong, in the angle of the morning sun. You lie on a sleeping mat of woven straw and wool, on the smooth floor of a modest stone home. The air is cool and still. Outside, the village is awakening. Light spills over the hills, painting cypress trees and rooftops in soft gold. A boy passes with a basket of figs. A woman sweeps her doorway and places a laurel leaf beside a niche kept for Apollo. You walk the village paths, past the potter at his wheel, his hands moving in quiet devotion. A small figurine of Athena nestled in the wall nearby. Every gesture is sacred, every movement an offering. At the early market, the rhythm continues. Women unpacking olives, herbs, flasks of oil, children fetching water from the fountain, men rolling barrels into place. There is no shouting, only murmurs, greetings, and the rustle of linen. In the center of the square stands a small shrine to Hermes, its base wrapped in a ribbon, its surface marked by the wax of countless candles. You exchange no coins, only smiles and favors, buying lentils, a spool of dyed thread, a loaf of barley bread still warm. Commerce here is not transaction, it is trust. As you walk home through olive groves, the wind carries the scent of salt and thyme. You pause, pluck a leaf, and tuck it behind your ear, a silent nod to Athena, to wisdom, to peace. Midday brings a simple meal, lentils, olives, a slice of goat cheese. You eat slowly, setting aside a small portion near the hearth, a reminder that nothing is ever truly yours alone, a gesture of thanks. Later, the heat thickens and hums with cicadas. You rest in the shade, eyes closed, hands on your chest, letting the silence speak. Time softens. Life here is not measured in minutes, but in rituals, repetition, relationships, reverence. As evening approaches, you gather with neighbors around the fire. Stories are shared, not headlines, but legends, not chatter, but myth. The gods return, not as distant beings on high, but as companions in laughter, in wind, in the hush of listening. And when the stars scatter across the sky, you kneel once more beside the hearth, whispering your final prayer to Hestia. You close your eyes. Sleep settles in, and in its embrace, you feel it fully. The comfort of a life rooted in belief, the peace of a rhythm unbroken, and the warmth of a home watched over by fire and by the gods. Women unpack baskets filled with olives, herbs, bundles of garlic, and ceramic flasks of oil. Men roll barrels into place. Children carry water from the public fountain, their feet kicking up dust with each barefoot step. There is no shouting, only the calm murmur of greeting, the rustle of linen, the soft splash of water. In the center of the square is a small shrine, not grand or towering, just a slab of stone covered in wax from old candles. It is sacred to Hermes, the fleet-footed god of commerce and travel. Someone has tied a ribbon to its base. Someone else has left a bit of bread. Even here, in the simplest of transactions, the divine is acknowledged. You buy your goods some lentils, a spool of dyed thread, a small loaf of barley bread, still warm in its wrapping. There are no coins exchanged, only nods, smiles, favors returned. Commerce here is not cold, it is communal. You walk home through the olive groves. The trees here are ancient, gnarled and silver, their leaves fluttering like whispers. The wind carries the scent of salt, of crushed time, of soil just beginning to warm. You pause for a moment. Beneath one of the trees, you reach up, pluck a single leaf, and place it behind your ear. A small gesture, but meaningful. It is said that Athena herself gifted the olive tree to mankind, and so each leaf is a thread that connects you to her, to wisdom, to peace. Back home, you prepare the midday meal. There is no feast, just simplicity. Lentils cooked in clay pots, onions sliced thin, olives pressed gently into bread, a bit of goat cheese if you are fortunate. You place the meal on the low table. You sit, and once again, before you eat, you take a small piece and set it aside, a sign of respect, a reminder that nothing is taken for granted. You eat slowly, you chew carefully, you listen to the birds outside, to the fire within, to the deep, slow silence of a world that does not demand your attention, but invites it. After the meal, you lie back on a woven mat in the shade. The heat has begun to press into the air, thick, steady, humming with cicadas. You rest your hands on your stomach, close your eyes. In the distance, a goat bell clinks, the fire crackles, and time softens. No one hurries here. Life is not measured in minutes, it is measured in rituals, in repetition, in relationships. Later, in the long, slow drift toward evening, you will gather with your neighbors. You will sit around the fire, under a sky full of stars. You will share stories, not news, but legends, not gossip, but myth. And in those stories, the gods will come alive again, as they always do, not as distant beings on a mountaintop, but as companions in the quiet moments, as presences felt in wind and stone, in laughter and in silence. You will end the day as you began it, by kneeling beside the hearth, whispering to Hestia. You will close your eyes, and as sleep takes you, you will feel it. The comfort of a world woven with belief. The peace of a life lived slowly. The warmth of a home watched over by fire and by the gods. And so, the day continues. The hearth flickers gently, casting warm light on smooth stone walls. Outside, the sun lowers, shadows stretch across the hills, and the village settles into its quiet rhythm once again. Children return home, their laughter now softer, their steps slower. The scent of herbs and firewood lingers in the air. Even the animals seem to move with more care, as though honoring the stillness of approaching dusk. As you sit by the hearth, a bowl of lentils in your lap, you begin to hear the familiar sounds of evening, not just the rustle of leaves or the soft hum of cicadas, but the voice of story. Someone begins to speak, a grandmother, perhaps, or a father, or a priestess visiting from another town. The words come slowly, measured, melodic, ancient. They tell a tale you've heard before, and yet it never feels old. A story passed down from fire to fire, from breath to breath. A story rooted deep in the earth, and in the hearts of all who live close to it. It is the tale of a mother's sorrow, of a daughter's return, of the reason why the flowers bloom and then fade, why the harvest comes and then sleeps. The tale of Persephone. So, lean back. Let the warmth of the fire hold you. Let the sounds of the village slip away, and allow the story to unfold gently around you. Let the rhythm of your breath guide you. Now inhale slowly, and as you exhale, allow yourself to drift. Drift deeper into the memory of a world shaped by story. A world where people didn't merely exist in time, but lived within myth. In ancient Greece, stories were far more than entertainment. They formed the very framework of understanding, the scaffolding of the seasons, of birth, of grief, of joy. These tales explained why the world turned the way it did. Among them, one story echoed more often than most, a tale whispered at harvest, murmured beside winter fires, painted onto urns, carved into temple walls, and lovingly passed from mothers to daughters. The story of Persephone. Imagine a world before Lausa, world untouched by sorrow, where trees always bore fruit, fields never grew weary, and the sun smiled gently upon a generous earth. This was how the world once was, lush, warm, and abundant. At the heart of this eternal spring walked a young maiden, daughter of Demeter, the mighty goddess of grain and growth. Persephone was not loud, nor was she fierce. She was soft, gentle as the color of blooming flowers, the laugh of a spring breeze, the scent of early rain. Wherever she walked, Wildflowers bloomed, narcissus, crocus, poppy sprouting beneath her barefoot steps as her fingers drifted through tall meadow grass. The earth answered her joy with wild generosity, bursting into life. Everything felt infinite. She lived beside her mother, Demeter, who, though she nourished the world, reserved her deepest love for her daughter. Together, they wandered the fields, harvesting figs, sowing barley, and laughing with a wholeness that filled the air. But far beneath the earth, someone else was watching. Hades, god of the underworld, was not evil, nor was he monstrous only alone. The realm he ruled was not a place of punishment, but one of quieter, still, somber place of endings. And in Persephone, Hades saw something his world had never known: warmth, color, life. He longed for her not with fire or fury, but with a hunger born of silence, the kind that grows in deep forgotten spaces. One day, as Persephone wandered a sunlit hillside gathering flowers, the ground beneath her shifted. There was no warning, no sound, only a silence too sudden, too unnatural. The earth tore open like parchment. From its depths surged a chariot drawn by horses black as obsidian. A hand reached up, and Persephone was gone. The world fell into breathless stillness, and in that quiet, Demeter began to search. Days melted into nights, and weeks folded into seasons as Demeter wandered the earth barefoot, her golden robe in tatters, her hair unbound, her hands thick with dust. She questioned the rivers, whispered to the winds, and pleaded with the stars, desperate for a trace of her daughter. But no answer came, and as her sorrow deepened, the earth itself began to mirror her grief. Wheat grew brittle and broke at the touch. Olive trees stood barren, figs withered where they hung. Rain fell, but the soil turned away, refusing to drink. The world slowed. Hunger crept into villages, not out of punishment, but as an echo of Demeter's heartbreak. Her pain became the earth's pain. Her emptiness spread across the land. Fires burned low, markets emptied, songs faded into silence. And still, she searched. In time, the truth surfaced. Zeus, the king of the gods, could no longer turn away from a world withering under grief. The fields lay fallow, the people starved, and silence reigned where life once thrived. At last, he commanded Hades to return Persephone, and once more the chariot rose from the underworld, this time bearing the girl who had been lost. But Persephone was no longer the same. She had sat upon the throne of shadows, wandered the echoing halls of silence, and tasted the food of the dead. Just 6 pomegranate seeds, sweet, red, eternal. In those 6 seeds lay a binding, unspoken and irrevocable, for no one eats in the realm of the dead and leaves unchanged. No one dines with death and returns wholly to the world of the living. So Zeus decreed, for each seed she had eaten, she would spend 1 month of the year with Hades. 6 seeds, 6 months, and thus the cycle began. When Persephone returned each spring, the world exhaled in joy. Crocuses split the softened soil, warm winds rustled through the cypress trees, and rivers found their voice once more. Demeter welcomed her daughter with trembling hands, offering tears, freshly baked bread, and garlands of wildflowers. For 6 radiant months, the earth bloomed under their shared joy. But as the days began to shorten, Persephone would start to fade. Her skin lost its glow, her voice quieted, her laughter slowed down. Demeter knew it was time to say goodbye once again. As Persephone descended into the underworld, Demeter turned inward. She wrapped the earth in a heavy cloak, laid frost across the fields, and let the world sleep. And in that stillness, she wept. Yet the Greeks did not tell this story as a tragedy, but as a truth and explanation woven into every season. They saw Persephone in the golden grain fields, in the blood-red poppies blooming beside olive groves, in the chill of early morning, and in the fragile bud of spring. They whispered her name when planting seeds, praying she would rise again, and in the hush of winter, they spoke of her softly, hoping she would not stay away too long. They honored Demeter too, not as a vengeful goddess, but as a grieving mother, a reflection of their own sorrow, their own love, their own strength to begin again. In a sacred city called Eleusis, not far from Athens, the people gathered each year to honor Demeter and Persephone through ancient, solemn rites. These ceremonies, the Eleusinian mysteries, were cloaked in secrecy, carefully guarded, passed from one generation to the next in silence. No one wrote them down. No one betrayed their truth. Yet those who participated spoke of transformation. They walked through darkness, listened as the myth was told, and reenacted Persephone's descent into the underworld and her eventual return. And when they emerged from that ritual journey, it was as though something within them had shifted. They had glimpsed the rhythm of life and death. They had learned to face mortality without fear, to see in the endless cycle of loss and return not despair, but something sacred, not to fear it, but to embrace it. Now, in your mind, picture the seasons. Picture spring gentle rains falling on soft earth, fresh green shoots breaking through the soil, laughter beginning to stir in the breeze. That is Persephone rising. Picture summer fields golden and full, days stretched long beneath a generous sun, the hum of bees weaving through warm air. That is Demeter rejoicing. Then comes autumn. Leaves burn gold and rust, fruit ripens and falls with weight, and the light begins to fade. Persephone prepares to leave, and winter, the hush, the stillness, the long breathless silence. That is grief, that is waiting. But the story does not end there, because she always returns. To the ancient Greeks, this myth was never just a tale of gods and goddesses. It was a story about you, a story about the rhythm of loss and return, about how life gives and takes, and then gives again. It spoke to the truth that death is not the end, that absence is not forever, that even in the coldest, quietest season, something sacred stirs beneath the soil. And tonight, as you listen, you carry that rhythm too. You may not see it, but it lives within you, in your breath, in your memories, in your dreams, just like Persephone, just like the seasons. And now, let the story settle. The myth has been told, the seeds have been planted, the earth, once vibrant with motion, has grown still again. But the world of the ancient Greeks held more than stories, it held places. Temples tucked into hillsides, altars weathered by centuries, sacred groves where the divine felt near. These were spaces where myth became ritual, where the sacred stepped into the world. So let us journey onward, from the quiet of the fireside tale to the heights of a mountaintop shrine, from the realm of story to the realm of worship. Let us follow the winding path to Delphi, where the gods did not merely listen, they whispered back. Close your eyes again now. Let the hush of myth settle into your body like warm cloth. The story of Persephone has quieted, its echoes soft and lingering. The fire by the hearth has faded to a gentle amber glow, and above you, the stars have begun to bloom, ancient, patient, watching. You are ready now to leave the village, not just in body, but in spirit, ready to follow the worn paths walked by thousands before you, winding through hillsides, lined with whispering olive trees and the sweet breath of wild thyme. These were not merely paths to places, they were paths to the gods themselves. Ancient Greece was a land where stones held memory, and the very air shimmered with spirit. The sacred was not confined to temples, it lived in the land itself. Mountains were more than earth and stone, they were the thrones of gods. Mount Olympus towered as the seat of Zeus and his divine kin, while Mount Parnassus, sacred to Apollo and the Muses, rose above Delphi like a divine spine, its slopes humming with legend. Rivers murmured with voices, springs shimmered with visions, caves cradled secrets to ancient forewords. To the Greeks, the world pulsed with presence. Every bend in the road might reveal a hidden shrine, a time-worn statue, or an altar blackened by the soot of generations. Even the trees were holy. One olive tree, older than memory, was said to have been planted by Athena herself. People came to it quietly. They left offerings of bread at its roots and whispered their wishes into its wind-stirred branches. And now, you travel. The quiet village lies behind you, and your pace is unhurried as the road winds gently along the mountainside, each step a quiet meditation. You pass others on the path, pilgrims, wanderers, seekers, some carrying tokens wrapped in cloth, others softly singing ancient melodies, and one woman in a grey cloak walking barefoot, her eyes lowered, lips moving in silent prayer. At last, you arrive. Through the trees, the stone terraces of Delphi emerge, not grand in the modern sense, not towering but glowing, as if lit from within. White marble steps, worn smooth by countless footsteps, lead the way forward. Columns rise like frozen music, and everything here is touched by a deep, timeless reverence. This is Delphi the Omphalos, the sacred navel of the earth. According to legend, Zeus released two eagles from opposite ends of the world, and they met here. Marking Delphi as the spiritual center of all things, not by power or conquest, but by presence. You step beneath the arched gateway, and the sacred way begins to rise before you. Winding upward, lined with treasuries, easy mall temples and monuments left by grateful cities who once received the oracle's favor. Each one tells a story, a frieze of soldiers locked in formation, celebrating victory, a relief of a harvest goddess, her arms extended in eternal blessing. Every stone seems to speak, and then you see the temple of Apollo. Its columns reach skyward, crowned with graceful spirals worn by time. Birds have made their nests in the crevices, and a laurel tree stands nearby, its leaves whispering in the breeze. This is not merely architecture, it is an invitation. You enter slowly, with reverent shoes removed, hands washed in the cool waters of a sacred spring. Inside, the air shifts. It is cooler, smoother, and somehow denser, as if infused with memory and meaning. A priest greets you, not adorned in splendor, but radiating quiet grace, and guides you forward. There, seated upon a tripod stool, is the Pythia. Her robes are simple, her face serene, her body gently swaying in rhythm with something unseen. She's enveloped in the rising smoke of burning bay leaves and barley, the air thick with scent and stillness. She has fasted, she is bathed in the sacred spring, and now she is ready. She does not simply hear, she listens, fully and deeply. Not with her ears alone, but with her whole being. She listens to the earth. From a deep crevice beneath the temple floor, sacred vapors risen seen to your eyes, but felt in the very breath of the room, as if the temple itself inhales and exhales with quiet rhythm. The Pythia begins to murmur, not in full sentences or clear declarations, but in fragments, in threads of meaning that drift like mist through the air. Her words are soft, elusive, yet heavy with weight. Around her, the priests listen closely, not to control, but to translate, to shape the murmurs into something that can be carried. And from this, a prophecy emerges. It may not be what you expected, but that is the nature of the divine. They offer not certainty, but reflection, not commands, but insight. And so you receive it gently, with both hands and an open heart. Delphi was not alone. Across the landscape of ancient Greece, sacred centers shimmered like stars, each with its own rituals, its own eternal flame. In Athens, you might climb the marble steps of the Acropolis, your fingers brushing the time-worn stones carved by ancestors long gone. Within the Parthenon, the colossal statue of Athena once stood, gold and ivory, towering, her shield catching the glow of 1,000 flickering oil lamps. You might join the Panathenea, a grand festival of music, poetry, and solemn procession. Women weaving the sacred robe, dancers moving in ancient patterns, the whole city not merely celebrating, but embodying the divine. And in Eleusis, you could walk the path of the mysteries, an experience so profound, so deeply sacred, that no one dared speak of it. Those who passed through its gates did not return unchanged. They emerged quieter, calmer, transformed. At night, the world softened. Festivals lit up the hillsides, rows of torches moving like rivers of fire. You might hear flutes, or low drums, or the soft chanting of priestesses wrapped in white, their faces painted with ash. The gods were not shouted to, they were sung to, in quiet voices, in repetition, in rhythm. Offerings were made not to bribe, but to honor. You might place a honey cake on an altar, or pour oil onto the ground, or tie a thread of red wool around a statue's wrist. Each act was small, but woven into a tapestry of meaning. And then, beneath the stars, you would return home, or to your tent, or to the temple steps, and sleep, knowing the gods had seen you, even if they did not speak. But not everyone was a pilgrim. Some lived within these sacred places, acolytes, priests, caretakers. They swept the marble before dawn. They tended the sacred fire. They fed the temple cats. They washed the feet of the statues, not for recognition, but for balance. Because to them, service was sacred. To keep the divine space clean was to keep the world in harmony. On certain days, sacred processions would wind through the city streets slow, deliberate, and full of symbolism. You might hear them long before you saw them. The distant rhythm of sandals on stone, the soft pulse of drums, the low murmur of prayer. At the front, a young girl might carry a basket of barley, her steps measured, her eyes fixed ahead. Behind her, Elders chanted hymns, while citizens walked two by two, carrying torches or small votive offerings. The air was rich with the scent of burnt myrrh and fresh laurel. No one rushed. No one shouted. Every movement was part of something greater, ritual echo of the myths themselves, enacted not for spectacle, but to maintain balance between heaven and earth. And as the procession passed, doors opened silently. People stepped aside, heads bowed. In those moments, even the most ordinary street became a sacred way. Inside the temples, the atmosphere deepened. You would cross the threshold into the naos, the inner sanctuary, where sunlight faded and the hush became complete. There, at the heart of the structure, stood the cult statue, a representation of the god, not as a decoration, but as a presence, tall, unmoving, and serene. It gazed eternally over its space. In front of it, an offering table held bowls of olives, loaves of barley bread, garlands of flowers. The air was heavy with incense, and the floor cool beneath bare feet. Priests or priestesses might move in silence, adjusting the offerings, tending the lamps, sweeping away the ash from an earlier rite. You might kneel without words, without expectation, feeling something ancient in this stillness, something that made you feel small, but not alone. The god would not answer in voice or sign, but their presence would be felt in the quiet, in the calm, in the certainty that the sacred was here, and that you were part of it. And now, the temple grows quiet. The last embers of incense drift upward, dissolving into the beams of pale morning light. The footsteps of pilgrims fade into the distance, their questions left behind, hanging softly in the air. The great sanctuary breathes again, emptied, but not abandoned. Because while the worshippers return to their homes, others remain, not guests, but guardians. They do not come to pray, they come to care, to sweep the sacred stones, to refill the oil lamps, to tend to the silence that holds the gods. These are the temple acolytes, quiet souls, living not apart from the sacred but within it. Let us now step into their sandals. Let us rise before dawn. Let us walk through the great temple of Apollo, while the world still sleeps, and experience what it was like to live in Delphi under the watchful eye of the divine. Let the hush of the sacred linger a little longer. The hymns have faded, the procession has ended, and the torches no longer burn along the marble path. But Delphi is not empty, not ever, because while the pilgrims return to their towns, while the priests retreat to their chambers, there are others who remain behind, quiet shapes in the shadows of columns, caretakers of the sacred. They rise early, they speak little, they live not just near the divine but inside its breath. Let us now walk in the sandals of one such soul, a temple acolyte, living a life of stillness, in service to Apollo. The sky is still dark when you awaken. The air is cool inside the stone chamber. You lie on a thin mat woven from reeds beneath a linen cover that still smells faintly of ash and cedar. There is no rooster to wake you, no bell, only the sound of your own breathing and the memory of duty. You rise quietly. Your movements are slow, respectful. You dress simply, white tunic, plain belt, sandals still dusty from the day before. Around your wrist, a red thread, a reminder of the God you serve, a sign of devotion, not decoration. You do not speak. The temple is not yet alive with sound. It is yours, in silence. Your first task is to gather water. You take 2 clay jars, balanced on a wooden pole across your shoulders, and step out into the early air. The Castalian spring trickles nearby, its waters said to purify not just the body, but the soul. You kneel beside it. You scoop the water slowly. It is cold against your fingers, smelling of stone and moss. You pause, not out of tiredness, but to listen. The birds are beginning to stir. The wind moves gently through the olive branches above. The world is still mostly asleep. And in that hush, something sacred stirs. You carry the water back to the temple. You rinse the offering bowls. You wash the statue's feet. You sweep the courtyard, one careful stroke at a time, removing dust without disturbing the laurel leaves that have fallen overnight. Each task has been done 1,000 times. Each task is quiet. Each task is holy. As the sun begins to rise, the golden light creeps slowly across the marble. You light the oil lamps lining the inner sanctuary. Their flames flicker gently, dancing against the walls. You prepare the altar, setting out barley, honey, olives, and a small clay figure, molded by your own hands. Other acolytes begin to appear, their sandals brushing lightly against the stone. You nod to them, no words are exchanged. Together, you form the backbone of temple life, not seen, not praised, but essential. Later, the priests will enter, the Pythia will prepare herself in solitude, and visitors will come bearing questions they cannot name aloud. But for now, this is the sacred stillness before the current begins. You sit in the sun-drenched courtyard. You sip warm water mixed with time. You listen to nothing in particular, and yet it all matters. The rustle of robes, the sound of the lyre being tuned in a nearby room, the soft pulse of your own heart. This, too, is ritual. This, too, is worship. Today is a day of prophecy. Smoke rises in steady coils from the laurel fires. The Pythia is seated at her tripod, her face calm, her eyes closed. You do not enter the room, but you feel it through the stone. A hum, a shift, the boundary between the world of men and the world of gods. Softening, you remain nearby, tending the hallway lamps, cleaning the carved base of an old statue, reciting the verses of Apollo under your breath. He who brings the sun, he who plays the golden lyre, he who speaks in silence. The prophecy is given in fragments. The priests murmur interpretations. The petitioner bows their head. No thunder, no lightning, only the movement of something unseen, felt through breath and ritual. And when they leave, you clear the path. You sweep the floor again. You place a fresh sprig of bay leaves at the threshold. The act is small, but in Delphi, every small act holds the weight of heaven. The day begins to end. The shadows grow long in the colonnade. The torches are lit once more, less for ceremony, more for warmth. You help distribute the evening meal to the others. Flatbread, lentils, figs dried in the sun, goat cheese wrapped in leaves. You eat slowly, seated beneath a column worn smooth by centuries of hands. You watch the stars emerge above the mountain ridges, and in the silence, you feel Apollo's presence, not as a person, not as a voice, but as a kind of harmony, the balance of shadow and light, the echo of music not yet played, the way the flame of your lamp mirrors the stars above. You have no questions for the oracle. You ask nothing of the gods. You are simply present, and that is enough. When all is still, and the last torch is dimmed, you return to your sleeping mat beneath the high, vaulted ceiling of the temple dormitory. You lie down slowly. The stone floor is cool beneath you. Your hands rest lightly on your stomach. Your breath slows. You feel the warmth of the marble around you, the warmth not of fire, but of memory, of songs sung here, of prayers whispered, of dreams dreamt. Outside, the olive trees rustle gently in the wind. Somewhere, a night bird calls. The temple sleeps, and so do you, wrapped in stillness, watched over by a god who does not need to speak, because here, in this sacred place, you are already known. And now, the duties of the day are done. The lamps in the temple have burned low. The acolyte has swept the last bit of olive ash from the steps, placed fresh bay leaves beside the altar, and folded their robes beside a sleeping mat of straw. Outside, Delphi is quiet. Even the wind moves more slowly now, brushing the columns like fingertips over stone. But in ancient Greece, rest was never just rest. Sleep was sacred. It was not simply the end of the day. It was the beginning of something deeper. Tonight, we explore that ancient realm, a world not of waking ritual, but of sacred dreaming, a hidden temple that lives inside the self. Let us lie down gently and enter it together. The Greeks believed that dreams were not figments of the mind, but messages from the gods, whispers delivered in symbols and shadows, guidance that came when the body was still and the soul was unguarded. This belief was not vague or poetic, it was practical, and entire sanctuaries were dedicated to the art of sacred sleep. They were known as Asclepia, healing temples named after the god Asclepius, protector of medicine and dreams. In these temples, those who were ill or troubled would journey far, not to be touched by a physician, but to be touched by a dream. They would fast, they would bathe in sacred springs, they would chant hymns under torchlight, and then, when night fell, they would lie upon the abyt in a quiet chamber reserved for dreamers. There, beneath an open sky or beneath painted ceilings of stars and vines, they would fall into sleep and await a vision. Sometimes Asclepius would appear himself in a dream offering herbs, touching a wound, whispering a cure. Other times, a serpent, the god's sacred animal, might wind around the dreamer's bed, bringing comfort, not fear. When they awoke, they did not rush. They sat in stillness. They recalled the dream slowly and told it to the temple priests. From that dream, meaning was drawn, and often healing began. But sacred sleep was not only for the sick. Even philosophers and mystics used dreams as a path inward. Pythagoras, Plato, and others believed that during sleep, the soul escaped the limitations of the body. In those hours of weightlessness, it could move freely to glimpse truths that the waking mind could not hold. To dream in this world was not to escape, but to return to a deeper knowing, to the inner temple. Imagine now that you are lying on the stone bed of an ancient sleep chamber. The stone is cool beneath you, but your body is warm. The sound of a fountain trickling nearby blends with the distant chirping of night creatures. Incense, burnt earlier, still clings faintly to the air. You close your eyes, not to forget, but to listen. This is a different kind of listening. You are not waiting for an oracle's voice or the hymn of a festival. You are listening inward to the space where breath becomes rhythm and rhythm becomes stillness. The world softens around you. Images begin to rise slowly. A laurel grove bathed in moonlight. A winding river shaped like a sleeping snake. A figure in white robes walking between cypress trees. What does it mean? It doesn't need to mean anything. Yet, not all dreams are messages. Some are simply moments of sacred wandering, and even wandering can heal. The temple around you fades. The voices are gone. Even the stone beneath you seems to dissolve into air. But you are not lost. You are carried, floating between past and present, between the myths you've heard and the ones your own mind now tells. You are not outside the ancient world anymore. You are within it, and as you breathe, slow and deep, you feel what the Greeks believed so deeply, that the gods do not only live they live in silence, in sleep, in you. And now, as the last dream image begins to fade, as even thought itself becomes weightless, you enter a final space, not of myth, not of ritual, but of rest, complete, sacred, still. Let us drift there now. Let the final hush come gently. Let the world fall away, and let sleep take you away. The dream fades, not suddenly, not sharply, but like mist lifting from the surface of a quiet sea. The figures have vanished, the temple walls are gone, and even the sounds of night, the birds, the fountains, the slow breath of sleeping stone, have fallen silent. There is nothing more to see, nothing left to do, only this, only stillness. You are lying now in a space beyond place, not in Delphi, not in Athens, but in a timeless moment stretched out like a path into the stars. It is warm, safe, vast. You are not alone, but there is no one else here either. Just the soft presence of something older than time, something deeper than language. This, too, was sacred to the Greeks. Not only the rituals, not only the myths, but this final surrender, this soft letting go. They had a name for this stillness, Hypnos, the god of sleep. He was not feared. He asked for no offering. He came like twilight, quiet and certain, wrapping the world in a velvet hush. He touched the eyelids of heroes, rested beside farmers in their fields, drifted like a breeze through temple doors, and laid down beside the sick, the weary, the wandering. He was not escape, he was return. And so now, you return to yourself. Your breath is slow, your thoughts are gentle, your limbs are heavy in the most comforting way. The world around you has grown soft and distant, its edges blurred like charcoal in water. There is no need to hold on. Everything that needed to be said has been said. Everything you needed to feel, you've already felt. Let it all fall away now. The village, the myths, the temple steps, the sacred fires, and the olive trees. Let them remain behind you, like footprints in sand. You do not need to carry them. They are part of you now. Their rhythm lives in your breath. Their quiet has settled into your bones. And now, you are weightless, floating in that sacred, dreamless space the Greeks knew so intimately. Not night, not day, but the hour that drifts between them. A space of complete surrender. A place where the soul rests, not because it is weary, but because it has come home. So sleep now, not because you must, but because you are ready, because you are health, because even the gods are quiet, and when even the divine rests, so may you. There is no need for a final word, no closing of the circle. Only this breath, then the next, then nothing at all, only sleep. Soft, still, sacred. Good night.